Welcome back to the National Bible Quiz lessons on introducing Jesus. Now we're at lesson 3. The question is, who is Jesus? Jesus' authority over evil spirits and sickness. Let's recap on what we learned the previous lesson. Let's look back at Mark chapter 1 verses 16 to 22. Take some time to answer these questions and refresh your memory a bit. First is, what did Jesus ask the fishermen to do and what was their response? Second, what did Jesus do in the synagogue? Alright, I hope you had a good discussion and that we are now ready for the next lesson. What are you most afraid of and why? I hope you were okay talking to your peers about what you were afraid of and why you were afraid of them. Now let's look into today's passage, which comes from Mark chapter 1 verses 23 to 31. And immediately there was in their synagogue a man with an unclean spirit, and he cried out, "What have you to do with us, Jesus of Nazareth? Have you come to destroy us? I know who you are, the Holy One of God." But Jesus rebuked him, saying, "Be silent and come out of him." And the unclean spirit, convulsing himself and crying out with a loud voice, came out of him. And they were all amazed, so that they questioned among themselves, saying, "What is this? A new teaching with authority. He commands even the unclean spirits, and they obey him." And at once his fame spread everywhere throughout all the surrounding region of Galilee. And immediately he left the synagogue and entered the house of Simon and Andrew with James and John. Now Simon's mother-in-law lay ill with a fever, and immediately they told him about her. And he came back and took her by the hand and lifted her up, and the fever left her, and she began to serve them. Now let's look into the questions for today. And remember, pause the video and take some time to discuss them further. The first question is, Jesus was teaching in the synagogue when a man suddenly cried out. What was wrong with this man? Yes, the man had an unclean, evil spirit in him. The next question is, who did the unclean spirit in the man recognize Jesus as? That's right! The evil spirit recognized Jesus as God's Holy One. Now, how did the unclean spirit respond to Jesus' command, and what does this show us? The unclean spirit obeyed Jesus' command and came out of the man. This shows us that Jesus has power over unclean or evil spirits. When Jesus went to Simon Peter's mother-in-law's house, what was wrong with her? Yes, she was sick with a fever. And what did Jesus do, and what does this show us? Jesus healed her. This shows us that Jesus has power over sickness. Think about the passage that we just read. People often fear evil spirits. That's why some of us are afraid of watching horror movies. Evil spirits, ghosts, or demons are often portrayed as being much more powerful than us. And the characters in these movies are defenseless against them. We might fear them because we feel that they have the power to hurt or harm us. However, Jesus is much more powerful than these evil spirits, They tremble and are afraid of him. And therefore, if we are under his kingship, we need not fear them at all, because we have Jesus, who is much, much greater than any of them. The same goes for sickness. Many of us are afraid of the thought of falling ill, especially when illnesses affect our capacity of studying, playing, and to do our normal activities. Perhaps you know of a loved one who is suffering from a serious sickness, and suffering is not a pleasant thing at all. Jesus showed his power and his authority over sickness. He healed many who were sick and suffering, including Peter's mother-in-law. He is compassionate and merciful to all who are in pain. So, don't hesitate to pray for your loved ones when they are ill, and even for yourself. Know that Jesus hears you when you pray, and trust in his kindness to work out whatever is best for you and your loved ones. He will never leave nor forsake us when we are sick. Now, here are a few questions for you to discuss and think about. Jesus has power over evil spirits and sickness. These are things that people are usually very afraid of. First, are you afraid of these things? Secondly, what makes you afraid of them? And thirdly, how should you feel knowing that Jesus is much more powerful than them? Let's dig deeper. Let's go back to Mark chapter 1, verses 32 to 34. Why did Jesus not allow the unclean spirits to reveal his identity as the Christ? Well, this is because Jesus had just started out his ministry and was on his way to fulfill God's plan to save humanity. His identity as the Christ who would suffer, die, and rise again would only be revealed step by step as he continued out with his ministry. This is often known by certain Bible scholars to be the messianic secret, Jesus not revealing his identity initially. Isn't it amazing that we now know Jesus as the Christ and that we are able to proclaim his identity in all the world? Jesus continued healing many who were sick and casting out evil spirits. However, he did not allow them to publicly tell others about his identity. Why was this so? Take a minute, pause this video, and talk about this. Now, I hope you had a good discussion and that you enjoyed this lesson, because that's all for now. Before you head off on your own ways, spend some time responding to God's word in prayer, and you may like to pray along some of these points. Thank God for the comfort of knowing that Jesus is greater than any evil spirits in the world. And pray for someone you know, maybe a friend or a family member who may be sick or unwell. That's all from us. See you next lesson.